want to talk about, because Lisa saw this too, that Ayala episode last night.
Oh yeah, that was really crazy.
That was.
Okay. Is your phone on airplane mode?
Is it on recording?
Yes.
Okay. Are we gonna do fake ads this week?
Yeah, we'll do one. Okay. But later.
Okay. Oh, do you have your notes? Are they in here? Where are your notes?
No, they're in my notebook.
We tested already? Are we going? Are we testing
Oh,
first?
what's happening? What did I just press? This is how it works when I press the button. Okay. I already tested it. Okay. We just need to gather round. This is your water, right?
Yeah.
Is this the right one, or should it be on the full circle?
It is on full circle.
No, that's 2 circles. Oh, okay. Unmute it? Or that means it's on?
unmuted.
Okay.
We good. We're good.
Okay.
I tested it.
All right. Welcome back to Good Moms, Bad Choices. This is Milah,
I'm Erica.
and today is Wednesday.
Today is Wednesday.
Not really, but when you hear it, it will be. It's Sunday, bitches.
It's actually Sunday. Our kids are in the other room playing with Jamila's parents. They are the babysitters of the day.
I don't even know. They might be louder with the two parents supervising than they are normally.
I know they're both extremely tired. We've endured, at least my daughter. Luna's so much like, why is my kid so crazy?
No, Luna acts crazy too. She just,
I mean, not crazy. It's just these tantrums.
I know.
And when I was out of town, I kept asking like my mom or my grandma, how are the tantrums going? I was like, what tantrums? She doesn't have tantrums with me.
You think she's only doing it with you?
No, I don't. I just think that's what my parents like to tell me because they're like, I don't know. When she's here, she's a perfect angel. I don't know what you're doing back home.
Do you think she's getting spoiled by that?
She probably doesn't have tantrums because she doesn't have to have them because she gets everything she wants.
And then as soon as she starts, they're like, here, yeah.
Mm.
Luna is definitely in a phase where I'm thinking like, I'm not against violence to children. However, I'm starting to believe.
Well, you are against violence?
I'm against it, but in Luna's case, I think she needs a little pow-pow because she's super grown and sassy, and she's like rolling her eyes, and she's hitting, like trying to hit me, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna beat your ass. But not that I condone child abuse, but you know what I mean. Anyway, today we have a special guest. Very near and dear to me. I'm very happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
We have writer, author, playwright, actress, model, artivist, Liza Jessie Peterson. Also, like my aunt. She's my mom's high school friend.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they went to high school together.
Yeah, that's my best friend.
Oh my goodness.
Like my godmother, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. That's my niece.
Yes.
Oh my
This is my
gosh.
auntie, my Aunt Lisa. She has been in the arts since I can remember. I remember like in high school, my mom went to New York and we went to go see one of your one woman plays then. And I was like
remember.
blown away. I was like so inspired by that. So,
And now look at you taking acting classes.
I know.
Yes.
I take credit for that.
You should.
I don't know why it took 15 years to cultivate.
No, actually, when Jamila went to see your show, she called me afterwards because it was in Harlem, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, because we both happened to be in New York at the time, and she was like, "I just saw this amazing show, one woman show. I didn't even know one woman show could exist. Like, how does one put on a show with one person?" But it worked, and it was amazing.
Oh.
And she was super excited about it. So
Yes.
I'm really excited to go to your show on Tuesday.
Yes.
And if you guys are in the LA area on Tuesday,
Well, this will be out.
oh shit, we already we posted it on. You missed it.
Either you were there or you weren't.
Yeah.
But you should definitely follow Lisa because you can find out whenever she's performing, and you perform in a bunch of in New York generally. But
One player is now touring nationally. So
oh my god, that's amazing!
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that
So the first stop is DC.
Okay, so that's the first stop of a national tour.
Mhm.
Dope. everyone?
Well, actually, the first stop just happened months ago in Boston.
Oh,
So I went from Harlem to Boston, and now it's going to Woolly Mammoth in DC.
Dope. And
Yeah.
how long were you in Boston?
3 weeks.
Okay, so you're gonna do generally about 3 weeks in each.
Yeah.
Try and do 3 weeks in each
The
place.
run's generally about 2.5 to 3 weeks.
Are you gonna come here for that peculiar?
I hope so.
I hope so too.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
My project manager, he's working on making some, connections out here in LA, and hopefully
Make it work, project manager.
Yeah, Brad.
Brad, we want the peculiar patriot in LA. Thanks, Brad. What's your Instagram?
Liza Jessie Peterson.
That's Liza with a Z, not an
Yes.
S. Okay, baby. And your website?
Liza Jessie, Jessie. Make sure there's an I in Jessie. LizaJessieP.com.
Cool. So most recently, outside of your one woman show, you released a book, All Day, that was also featured on Sunday's book club reading. It's going to be on the website, so anybody who wants to go check it out, there'll be a summary. We highly recommend it, and where you can find it on our website too.
Yay!
But tell us about it.
So my book is called All Day, A Year of Love and Survival, Teaching Incarcerated Kids at Rikers Island. And it chronicles one particular year. So I've been working at Rikers Island for 20 years. I started in 1998. And the book takes place, the time frame is from 2008 to 2009. So within the 20-year span that I was working at Rikers Island in different capacities, there was one particular year where I was asked to teach full-time, to be a full-time school teacher, teaching GED. So prior to that, I had been a teaching artist, a reentry specialist, working with them when they come home. So I've never worked with them in that capacity. So this was a really specific and particular and unique year out of all the years that I've worked at Rikers Island. So it was so, wow. It was so different and so challenging and just so wild that while I was working, because my day started at 7:50 a.m. in the morning, and I had to leave my house at 5:30 a.m. just to get to Rikers. And so I'm an artist, so I'm wired differently,
That conformity was not.
You late?
Right.
Were you late?
Yes, no, I was not late, but it definitely made me have to switch on another
It's
kind
more like
of
a structure,
a different kind of gear in my mind, in my head. And so, my artist was struggling to survive, was like, I didn't have a creative pulse. And so the only way that I could, kind of make sense of what was happening in the world that I had just entered, because I'm there from 7:50 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. in the same classroom with the same boys all day. The bell doesn't ring. They don't change classes. I'm there, and I teach all the subjects.
Wow.
So,
and for those listeners who are not familiar, Rikers Island is a prison.
It's a jail.
It's a jail.
Jail,
Oh,
yeah.
jail. Okay, not a prison.
Yeah.
Jail. Okay.
It's a jail. I think it's one of the largest in New York, in the country.
You have to take a ferry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, you don't have to take a ferry, but you do have to take a bus over the bridge.
Okay.
So it literally is surrounded by water.
Okay.
So that's why Rikers Island.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way that I could make sense of what was happening and just kind of, I don't know, just keep some kind of pulse for my artist was I came home every day after work and I would just download in my journal, because I've always been a journaler. I write in my journal all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would come home from work, it would just be, I'm absorbing so much that I had to download. So I would write in my journal. Now I had no idea that my journal was going to become my book, because I wasn't
Doing
in the
it for
classroom
purpose.
thinking, oh, this would be a great book and this would be a great story. Like I'm in it. I'm in the trenches. I'm fighting with these boys. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So the journal was something that just helped me to really kind of release, to make room for in my head and my spirit to go in the next day with a clean slate. So about a year after I left Rikers Island, I literally just picked up. Oh, there I am with no makeup. See, you didn't tell me I was going to be recorded. So I had no makeup on. This is just lip gloss.
And look, it's still
So,
glowing. The gloss
okay.
is popping.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I'm
So
not-
look at the lips. Don't look at anything else. So, being vain because I'm in LA. Because I'm in LA.
Welcome to the jungle.
I know, right? Exactly.
Different jungle.
So, about a year after I finished did that stint at Rikers Island working in that capacity, I picked up my journal just randomly. You know how sometimes you go back over your journals and you just kind of want to flip through and see what
I
you're
did that
going
recently.
through. Yeah,
like,
you just kind of exactly. You kind of like taking a look back in your life to see where you were at that time, emotionally, spiritually, and what was going on. So I opened up the journal and it was one of the days that I had downloaded from working in the classroom, and it made me laugh. I'm like, oh my God, I remember that shit. And I turned the page and it made me laugh some more. I was like, oh my God. And I kept turning the page and I realized in that moment that I had chronicled my entire year working at Rikers Island. I said, oh my God, I wrote my book. But when I was in the classroom,
you weren't thinking.
I wasn't thinking it's a book. This was the only way that I could survive and just have some kind of, sanity and some kind of creative pulse to make room to just be creative, which I was not because I wasn't performing. I wasn't writing.
You thought you were not.
I thought I wasn't, but what I was doing, I was like a sponge. So I was absorbing, which is what we artists do. We're antennas, we're sponges, we absorb, and then we download, we process, and then we release in whatever way we do, whether it's music or singing or dancing or writing or acting. And so I was literally absorbing everything and kind of squeezing it out on my journal, and my journal was like, "Oh, I'm here for you." Yeah,
that's so cool.
So I'm sure that was a life-altering experience.
It was, and you'll get it, and it's definitely in the book, and it's in the show that you're going to come see on Wednesday, which the people who are listening will have missed it.
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, Tuesday. Thank you. Yes. So so you'll get an idea. You'll see I'll be performing excerpts of me in the classroom with the boys and what that was like. And
how did you even get the job at Rikers? Like, what led you to Rikers?
So my introduction to Rikers Island, which was my introduction to the prison industrial complex, was in 1998. And I was asked to teach a poetry workshop. At the time, there were a bunch of nonprofit, not a bunch, but there were several nonprofit organizations, and they would get artists, writers, poets, and they would send them out to the different public schools throughout the different 5 boroughs to do artist workshops, poetry workshops, music workshops, because the schools didn't have money. So the nonprofits, provided that, that service. And because I was already in the spoken word scene and I was doing my thing and I was making a name for myself, the New York Poets Cafe, shout out to New York Poets Cafe. The nonprofit asked me to come and, be a teaching artist. And the very first job I got was teaching poetry workshops to incarcerated adolescent boys at Rikers Island. Now, it was supposed to be a 3-week workshop because that's how teaching artist gigs work. You go somewhere, you're teaching artists for a couple weeks, and then they give you another job, or they'll find another school. So I thought I was going to, I didn't know that I was going to Rikers Island because the name of the school was called Island Academy.
Oh, damn! Can you imagine just going to another school? Oh wait, no.
Exactly. So I thought I was going to like a prep school, like an academy.
Right.
Literally, yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, Rikers Island. And so the 3-week workshop turned into 3 months because the teachers kept asking me. So the teacher next door was like, oh, I want her next. And the teacher next door, oh, I want her next. And so they kind of passed me around like a hot potato because there was such a great response from the boys that all the teachers wanted to have the cool poetry lady come and do their class next. So my 3-week stint, they kept booking me at that same school. So I became the teaching artist in residence at Rikers Island for 3 months, which turned into 3 years. And, so I had a relationship developed with Island Academy. So the vice principal at the time when I was a teaching artist in 1998, he later became the principal. So when he was a principal back in 2008, he was like, hey,
I know you.
You work well with this population. We need a substitute. Come in. Can you cover for a year? And I think you'd be great because you're a writer. So you'd be great, doing English, language arts. And I said, sure. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Right. No idea. It was terrifying. Yeah. How
many students were in a class?
About 25.
And then is there like a correction officer there the whole time?
There's supposed to be, but there wasn't always.
Are they understaffed?
No, they weren't understaffed, but to toot my own horn,
You had it
I
together.
kind of had it on lock. So they would just kind of poke their heads in,
Okay.
and I was one of those classrooms where they didn't have to come and monitor and babysit. They would just kind of check in, make sure she's all right. Okay, Miss P, she got it under control. She's cool. And so I was kind of one of the classrooms, and there were other classrooms like that, but there were some that needed a CO in there all the time because the teacher was, just didn't.
So
have it on
gradually
lock.
you got more and more comfortable with your students, and so you didn't feel like it was a threat. Like you didn't feel scared. You were.
Well, I was never scared.
Mhm.
So I was never scared. So when I say it was terrifying in the sense that I didn't think that I was going to be a great educator because I know how to write. I know how to speak the King's English, but to teach it, now I've got to teach the mechanics. That's a whole different
thing.
That's a whole different thing. So yeah, I know grammar, structure, and sentence, context, but to teach it, it was like, oh shit, I've got to go back and relearn the mechanics so I can teach it, even though I know it instinctively.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You
But
can
now I've
remember.
got to be able to break it down and make it accessible for students so that they can now do what I do kind of effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
That's
what
all
was
the-
terrifying.
Yeah.
And social studies, I was like, oh my God, the branches of government. Like I forgot all that
yeah.
shit. So, but I've got to be able to teach it. So I've got to relearn it. So I was terrified because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to suck as an educator. And my job is to teach them. So that was the fear of not being a good
Okay.
educator, not for my safety.
I feel like have that fear daily as a parent.
Oh yeah, me too.
Right.
I'm like, oh, so funny. I can relate.
Literally today,
I thought,
Jamila, I was telling her, I was like, this is unacceptable. Do you know what unacceptable means? And she's like, no, what does it mean? And then I was like, wait, I know what it means. So I've never been
Right,
like,
exactly.
what is the definition
Right,
of that? And I was
right.
like, it means
I'm not
I
happy.
don't like it.
So you have to learn how to dissect everything down to its root.
Yeah, it's like, it means I don't like it. No, I was like, that's not what I need to get deeper. Yeah, exactly. Like I need to get deeper. I feel like I'm constantly challenged, by her when she's asking me questions, and she's only 3. So I can only imagine as an educator when you have teenagers asking you
For damn,
questions.
they're adults.
And of course, they're little assholes. And
Teenagers are narcissistic gremlins.
Yeah.
so they're challenging you daily. Like, well, what does that mean? But tell me what that. And you're like, well, damn. Like it keeps you on. I had to keep you on your toes. You
Yeah.
probably
Oh my
learned
God.
more about. Went back and relearned so much stuff that you
Yeah.
learned in school.
Absolutely.
And more.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
They made me earn my stripes. Yeah. Every stripe I have, I got from those boys.
You mentioned a word earlier. You said when you first went, it was your first introductory to prison.
Industrial complex.
What does that mean?
So the prison industrial complex, which is now known as mass incarceration, it's the
Okay.
same thing.
Okay.
So it's mass incarceration because it's an industry, it's a whole system.
Mm-hmm.
Like the military industrial complex,
Okay.
it's an industry, the military industry.
Right.
So the prison is an industry,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a national industry in this country.
So speaking of that, Erica and I did some brief research before you came. I'm sure.
Look at you.
I'm
Google
sure-
mommies.
Yeah, Google
We
Mom.
did. We were low key crying.
We were crying.
Yeah.
I mean, because we know, of course, I know that prison reform is something that's been, so many politicians, push for against it because it's in their best interest. It's feeding their pockets, and it's just so like I don't see an end to it,
Mhm.
unfortunately,
It's fucking crazy.
because there's too much money in it,
Mhm.
and it's sort of the new slavery. In so
Sort
many-
of.
It
It
is.
is.
in
It
so
is.
many ways, for minorities and.
So let's read a couple of the statistics we found.
One is that the U.S. makes up 5% of the global population and has 25% of the world's prison population. There's 2.3 million people in prison today, right now.
And we only make up 5% of the global population.
Right.
So it means a lot of motherfuckers are locked up.
Here, specifically.
Specifically. Yeah, no,
In the
more than
US.
anywhere else.
Yeah.
And please, if you have anything to add.
Well, the United States is the prison superpower of the planet.
Damn, that sounds crazy.
Mhm. But it's true.
What else is in here? Oh, in 2012, U.S. spent $81 billion on corrections. Do your other statistics?
Oh, and as far as like the budget for education is $64 billion, which is obviously it's offset by this $80 billion budget. So it's like they're spending so much money on prison and spending less on the education for these for these young men and women
Mhm.
to try to understand why it is they're going to prison. Well, a lot of them are for stupid crimes that shouldn't be in prison for, or in jail for that matter. You know, I was telling Jamila, I was like, so many of these kids that are in jail for things that I have done so many times.
Mhm.
That could be me, except I didn't get caught.
Mhm.
You know, like in jail for like with Khalif Broder, like stealing a backpack.
Which he did not do.
Exactly, which he didn't even do.
And no, despite the fucked up circumstances that he faced, he refused to say he was guilty.
Right. He didn't want to take the plea.
Which is a whole, like, we'll talk about him specifically if you guys haven't heard of him. But also, we're talking about, you know, the prison system mimicking slavery, because African American and Hispanics make up only 32% of the US population, but they make up 56% of the incarcerated population, which that was 2015 statistics. So we're smaller in numbers, but somehow primarily filling the prisons, which to me says we're being targeted. And if what do they say? If Blacks and Hispanics were incarcerated at the same rate as Caucasians, the prisons would be
the population would decrease 40%. Meaning,
if it was equal, if the shit was actually fair,
right.
if shit was actually fair,
Right.
like it should be, you know, then it would decrease by 40%. So that's why we think that it mimics slavery a lot, and it's just like a legal way of allowing the shit to happen. You know, free labor.
Are you familiar with the 13th Amendment?
The documentary, or just the 13th Amendment,
right? Because the 13th. The film, the documentary by Ava DuVernay, which is brilliant, which everyone should watch and study on Netflix. Yeah. The 13th is from the 13th. It means the 13th Amendment.
Right.
And the 13th Amendment, which is in the Constitution, says that slavery is illegal except for punishment of a crime, which means that if you commit a crime, then that 13th Amendment does not cover you. So that slavery is legal if you are convicted of a crime. And right after the Emancipation Proclamation, right after slavery ended, there was, you know, the slave owners, right? They needed workers. They needed people to continue. They needed to keep the money coming in.
Right.
So now they have their former slaves who can now just walk off and be free. So,
but they really can't, because they don't have education and they don't have property and have nowhere to live.
And some were okay with that. They were like, well, we're going to make it work however we rather work it out, however we need to work it out and be free than to stay and be slaves. And some stayed and continue to work. But there was this thing that they created called convict leasing. And convict leasing meant that you know, if you were arrested, right, that you could the plantation owners, the slave, you know, former slave owners, they could get convicts and they can lease them out to work on the plantation to do the same work that the slave did, but they were now getting the convicts. So they were still doing the same work that the slaves were doing, but now they were getting convicts. So then it was in the best interest for the state and the counties to now have a population of convicts that can then be leased out to the former slave owners
to have basically free labor.
To have free labor legally. You understand? So convict leasing then replaced what was slavery. So that was the beginning of seeing the prison population grow, because you could get arrested for anything, for looking white people in the eye. You could get arrested. And mind you, now we have slaves who are, you know, Black people, Africans who are now free, who don't have under, you know, the rules of slavery, but now they're being punished for not having a job. They're being punished for, you know, small, what they call, you know, vagrancy crimes, you know, loitering, congregating to a
congregating.
I mean, for literally, if you look at a white man in the eye, you could be arrested for, you know.
Well, also not knowing this new society's rules, because all you've ever known is living on a plantation.
Well, there are no rules for Black people.
Well, there's
because
no rules,
any rules were
but that's what I'm
twisted
saying.
and bent, and there was and it didn't apply to us.
Yeah.
So they could say anything they wanted.
And
anything. And
who gonna check me?
Exactly.
Who gonna check me?
Exactly. So now you have a whole swath of, you know, recently freed, African people, former slaves, who are now being swept up into this convict, status, who now are being leased back out to the former slave, right, and doing the same thing and as former slaves. So that was the beginning of what has now ballooned into what we now
2
call
million
mass
people.
incarceration. And the 13th Amendment, which is in the Constitution, makes it legal to have people who are incarcerated work for free.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have so many, businesses and corporations, hire and they use prison labor.
And don't be confused, guys. Like, if you just do a little bit of research, you'll find that like major billion-dollar companies that in reality don't fucking need free labor utilize this free labor.
Oh, GE, airlines, lingerie, I'm not going to get into this because
you guys say Whole Foods?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, milk, potatoes. You could just really, if you Google companies
appliances
that use slave labor.
Slave labor,
prison labor. Yeah,
it's just so crazy.
Watermelons, agriculture, Victoria's Secrets, phone companies, furniture, military helmets, microphones. The list. It's
sick.
It's almost unimaginable.
Probably a lot of things in my house right now.
Yeah.
And not even knowing it.
Tilapia. So there's so much
that you wouldn't even imagine. So many major companies and corporations are benefiting from this.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the people who have shares and fucking own private prisons.
Yeah.
Basically allowing slavery to take place, but in like a hush hush presentable way.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then this is why, guys, like, I don't fuck with the government. And I probably never will. Like, I can't trust the government that enslaved people, my ancestors, and then twist rules to benefit them. That's why, like, in general, I have huge distrust for the government and politicians in general, because I don't think any of that shit is cool. And it's almost like sugar-coated to make it seem like it's the land of the free and there's just this democracy. And that's why
for some.
And for some, but that doesn't apply to people that look like me. So fuck it. And it's just crazy to me that we, people like to say, primarily people who are not affected by this, or don't know people who are affected by this. And that was another thing about that for the Peculiar Patriot that I really liked. It kind of, I didn't recognize this about like the prison system, how many people like I know who have been affected, how I personally have been affected by the prison system. And I have super scary stories. And I come from a pretty decent background, living in LA. It's not, I don't live in gangster paradise or no shit like that.
Right.
But I'm just like, it's almost like, oh yeah, I know this person went to prison, this person went to prison. Like, it's just second nature. You don't realize it's normalized. And then I have like friends who come by this by like random occurrences, and they're like, I can't believe this is so unjust, or I read the Black Jim Crow. I'm like, I'm surprised you're shocked, because this is something that I've known existed for a long time, but it almost is sad for me that I'm
numb to it.
Yeah. So we're also looking at some other things. Do you know the judge Mark Chiavarella?
What's his last name? Chiavarella,
who the Pennsylvania judge.
Oh yeah, there was a documentary about him. Kids for Cash.
Yes. Kids for Cash.
Yeah.
And basically it was a judge and a district attorney and also a developer all working together to basically give the judge and the district attorney kickbacks
for sentencing kids to their facility.
Yeah, because they have a privately owned facility.
Exactly.
And the more beds are filled, the more money they were getting. I think in total
3,000. Yeah. 3,000 kids he sent to jail.
Yeah, I talk about that in my play.
And it's just insane.
And how many got expunged after they found him out?
It was 2,400. It was like basically 2,500. Basically, 2,500 of those cases were deemed total fucking lies and bullshit.
Yeah.
Like,
and just giving them the max for little shit. And these are like 16-year-old kids.
and there's this one, we watched this YouTube video of one of the mothers. Once this judge was convicted, he got 28 years in prison.
Thank God.
Which honestly, he deserved this death penalty. I'm sorry. Like, you don't have to
I
kill
think he
people.
deserves to suffer.
You don't have, but I just think it's so funny. Like, the death penalty is always regarded for people that are like, who kill people or like rapists, but there's other ways you can fuck someone's life up. Like this woman, like, she was screaming at the top of her lungs and like literally brought tears to my heart thinking about my child. And she was like, do you remember me? Do you remember me?
You remember my son?
Do you remember my son? He was a star, like, wrestler. Well, he's dead now. He shot himself in the heart because he was never the same after he came out of that place.
I blame you.
He's like, and he was regarded and praised for being tough on crime with teenagers.
Wow.
And would speak at colleges about it, like how he was so tough. But really, he was tough because he was getting money.
Of course.
And it's just like, how?
He wasn't being tough. He was being cruel.
That's cruel on a different level.
And I was trying to find research, like, what I really wanted to know. I mean, I'm sure I know the answer, unfortunately, but like, who was more targeted in that courtroom with him?
I mean,
of course.
the statistics
You know,
are the
us.
statistics.
Us.
Yeah, and it's just like,
Us.
I couldn't, and that's just one guy that got caught.
Well,
Right.
That is the point.
That's the thing. He's
So
one,
imagine.
there's
So imagine
many.
how many thousands upon thousands of children and adults who are being railroaded, but it doesn't make it to the news.
Because, and a lot of times, unfortunately,
That's
like,
domestic terrorism.
yes, and they all have their hands in the pot. And it's like, my biggest thing is like, I'm such an empath. Like, how the fuck does money dictate your morality on this level?
Because
like,
you don't have morality.
how the fuck do you look yourself in the mirror at night? Like, and I'm sure that guy had kids. I'm sure he had, like, that's
They compartmentalize. It's like, they're not my kids, it's not my kids.
Cognitive dissonance. It's like you can't connect with something that's not happening directly, specifically to you.
It's insane. It's so crazy. But so with your work that you did in this 1 year that you were there, I mean, what was your first day like?
My first day was, absolute terror. Not for my safety, but terror as an educator. Like, I know I'm going to suck. These kids are going to see right through it,
Yeah, that's a lot of hours to be in a group of 25 teenage boys.
Are you kidding me?
Like, just
teenage
all day.
hormonal boys who are like in jail. It was crazy.
Disrespect, I'm sure, the disrespect.
But
and
you know
they're beautiful, so I know they were.
Yeah, so they were crushing and that kind of shit. So I had to like manage that in the classroom. But I think part of the reason why I was able to wield so much respect in the classroom, and I'm really proud to say that throughout the entire year that I was there, I never had any kids pop off in my classroom. Pop off me, I'm using their slang. I didn't have any fights in my classroom. They didn't fight, which was common.
Rare.
I mean, you hear the next classroom, it's like, that's fine. Oh shit.
Yeah.
They're popping off in the next classroom.
Right.
They never popped off in my classroom. I think part of it was because, I kept a high standard. And I did a lot of things in my classroom. I made sure the desks were always neat. I was like, I want my rows, keep it neat. I had aromatherapy. So I had I put, frankincense oil on the desk when it came in because I wanted to smell a certain way. So just to kind of take them out of that jail setting. Do you know what I mean? Just even if it's just by the smell in the room, having to be clean. It wasn't like mumbo jumbo, all desk all around. Like, no, we're going to have order, and at first they were like, "Miss, this jail." And of course there was some pushback, but I was like, "No, give me my rows. I want to," because I'm walking up and down the rows. I'm not sitting at my desk. I'm walking up and down the rows. I'm making sure that I'm engaging them and I'm keeping the standard high. So yeah, I'm expecting you to do work. I'm asking you for a 5-paragraph essay. If you give me 3, good. If you give me 1, okay. But I'm going to ask for 5. Do you know what I mean? And I really, really, really made sure that there was always a cultural perspective. I always made them learn about who they were as young African-American men in America and their African lineage and history. So when they looked on the walls, there were pictures of ancient Kemet. Kemet is the African name for Egypt. So they were looking at, old pictures of ancestors of Malcolm X, of Martin, of, Marcus Garvey, of ancient, kings and queens from antiquity. So I had these pictures on the wall, and so they were like, oh, Miss Peace, you on that black shit. Yeah, I'm on that black shit. But they appreciated it. So because when I taught those lessons about the Black Panthers, they would shush each other because they wanted to hear that. So I'm not giving you the old, and no disrespect. Look, all of our history, the fact that we are like the most amazing people on this planet, what we endured and what we suffered and what we have continued to, and what we have survived and thrived through. So I didn't start with
Slavery.
Rosa Parks. I didn't start with
Slavery.
And listen, salute to Rosa's. No disrespect,
No, of course.
but these are young African American boys, 16, 17, 18. So I had to meet them where they were. So I started with some gangster shit. I started with the Black Panthers and how they carried, their rifles
and stood their ground.
And they exercised their Second Amendment rights. So just to kind of get them to listen, and something that would capture their imagination right away. And they were like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. So they wanted to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know about Malcolm X. They didn't know that he went to prison.
So this same man was sitting in this very seat, and from here on, you can go this way, you can go this way. But this is not the end of your story, and this does not define you. So
I started, talking about that and Fred Hampton and like some of our real, real revolutionaries, in our history that they could relate to immediately. That kind of it raised the respect level because they were like, oh, she's giving us something that we're not going to get or we haven't gotten
yet, right?
Oh, this is about me. Oh, I'm like Malcolm. Oh, I'm like Fred Hampton. Oh, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's some gangster shit. Yeah. And so they knew that I was really committed to teaching them things that they weren't getting or haven't gotten.
Right.
And so that raised the respect level, I think. I know it did.
Mm-hmm.
And so my classroom was, real like African.
Was it all Black boys, or was there any Hispanic?
Yeah,
or any white?
Yeah. It was primarily Black. I did have some one kid they called Mexico. I had some Puerto Rican and Mexican. Not only Mexican, it was like one or two.
You're in New York,
yeah. So it was mostly Puerto Rican. Yeah, Puerto Rican and Dominican. And there was during the year that I was there, I had 2 white boys.
Just two.
And how did they take to your lessons?
One was really quiet. He was really traumatized. So he was a writer.
By his experience.
Yeah, because he was in the slave ship. Mm-hmm. So the white boy in the slave ship, can you imagine?
How the fuck did I get
Exactly,
here?
exactly.
Oh, damn.
I didn't even think that's a really interesting analogy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so he was disoriented, and I gave him a notebook, and I just had him writing. He wrote some really powerful poetry. Mm-hmm. So that, for me, that was my way of
knowing you were connecting.
Knowing I was connecting and keeping him
okay,
at least while he was in my classroom. I couldn't protect him when he left the classroom, but I was like, okay, you're in my classroom. Everybody here, I'm going to tap into what I see as their potential in their life. And this white kid, he could write. So while you're in my classroom, I just want you to write. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because that's going to help you deal with therapeutic and help you deal and help you kind of navigate and kind of download what you're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And he wrote some powerful shit. I put one of his poems in my book.
Oh, damn. I got to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So in our research, not in our research, but we talked. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Khalif Browder,
mm-hmm.
who was at Rikers. I know you didn't know him or didn't teach him, but he got arrested when he was 16. There's Jay-Z did a documentary also on Netflix
mm-hmm.
about him.
The Khalif Browder story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, you guys, my angry Black woman inside of me, I really pick and choose when I can partake in certain.
No, you have to
because
it's self-care. Because we
also,
can't.
It's definitely self-care.
We can't walk around in a total rage.
Sometimes I feel bad, but sometimes I know I avoid shit because I can be angry for like weeks.
Someone actually, Sebastian came over 2 days ago. Was like, have you seen the R. Kelly document, the R. Kelly thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no. He's like, you have to watch it. You have to watch it. And I was like, honestly, like, I don't think I don't have to watch it. Like, I know I've heard enough. I already know he's fucked up. I've been known he's fucked up. I'm so I just don't need more it's just, there's already so much negativity surrounding Black people, women, all those things. Like, I was like, I'm cool. Like I told him, I was like, I've seen enough shit that I don't need that to like also make me angry.
But even that, like watching that, I could watch because I was like mostly shocked by.
I mean, it's different than like watching the 12 Years a Slave or like, you know what I mean?
Because these are things that like he chose to be a weirdo. I mean, like he didn't choose. I know he had a fucked up childhood, and which is, you know, people don't say this.
People don't address that.
People don't address that, and that's how I feel a lot about.
Well, they did address it in the documentary. I think the brother talked about
his molestation.
But what I mean, like the media doesn't
address that he needed help.
Of course, I'm not saying that he's
excused.
Justified in what he did, but people never talk about why these people are the way they are. They just demonize them and throw them away. And which, you know,
that doesn't resolve
he deserves whatever's coming to him. But I'm just saying,
hurt people. But when you hurt people, you have to be held accountable.
Exactly. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so difficult to talk about, because like you don't want to sound like you're supporting what he did.
No,
but you also
absolutely.
don't want. But you also need people to understand that like he was like a child once too,
and whatever he experienced led to this person he's become, this kind of monstrous person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But back to Khalif. Is
you're saying you haven't watched it probably because you
enough. Yeah, I get it gets to me.
But you got to know your threshold, because self-care is a revolutionary act.
Yeah,
and we have to stay charged up. We have to stay.
That's why I like that download. I like that as a term, downloading your feelings. But he went to jail at 16 for allegedly stealing a backpack that he did not steal. And he was there without a trial because he refused to plead guilty, which in a lot of this, like the judicial system, people, mostly minorities, go there, they get pressured into pleading guilty because the thought of having to stay there longer to await trial is daunting. Anyway, for 2 of the 3 years he was there, he was in solitary confinement. Which
at 16.
At 16 years old, which at any age, I couldn't have imagined that. And he discusses like mice running up on him, not being able to go outside, being starved for days. And I was beat up by the prisoners. It's on camera.
Beat up by the prisoners
and by inmates. And what I was going to ask you, so you see, you get 25 students. I don't know how they get chosen to come to your class every day. Were there's any point in your experience where somebody didn't show up for instance, if maybe he was supposed to be your student, and he didn't show up for 2 years. Like, is anyone questioning these? Like,
well, it's interesting because when I was there, and today solitary confinement has been eliminated for adolescents.
So that's recent. That recently.
That's
happened.
Recent. But when I was teaching, and from 2008 to 2009, there was still solitary confinement, which on Rikers Island they called the Bing. So, and also because I work in a jail, which is different from a prison. The jail is where you haven't been sentenced. And if you have been sentenced, it's under 2 years. So I had some kids who were sentenced for under 2 years, but the majority were not sentenced. So they were just awaiting sentencing, or they were going back and forth, to court to see what was going to happen. So their fate was still dangling, as opposed to prison where you've been sentenced, you know what you're serving, 5 years, 6 years, 2 years, whatever, you know what that is. So jail, there's a lot. And there's a lot of anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen to your life. And the kids who were sentenced were a little bit calmer because they knew, at least it's like, okay, I'm looking at 15 months. Do you know what I mean? So there was that resolve.
Right.
But most of the kids were not. So as a result, there were some kids who I didn't see for periods of time because they were in the Bing, and they would come back and be like, yeah, I just did, 90 days in the Bing or 60 days in the Bing, meaning solitary confinement. Sometimes they got moved to different housing areas. So I might see a kid who left, or a kid might have a court date and then he got sentenced and they ship him upstate. So
you never see him.
So again. I never see him
and
again.
And there's no goodbyes.
Exactly.
You don't know what happened to them, how to get in contact with them.
Exactly. So in jail, there's a transient population. So it's not steady. So my classroom, it was constantly shifting. So I had a core group, but it was constantly shifting. Court dates, some got shipped upstate, some got released, when they went their next court date, they went home, and some were in the Bing, solitary confinement. So there was a lot of that, which made it even more challenging because I had a new kid. I'm in the middle of a lesson. I've got to bring him up to speed, so it was challenging.
When I was reading about, because I was like, I was trying to educate myself on, I kind of knew the difference between jail versus prison versus privately owned prison. And I read something that said that basically jails sometimes or facilities are not kept up because there is such a transient, like people are in and out. There's not like this need to house someone.
And jails are city run. So you're going to the city jails. Prisons are primarily state run.
Right.
So
there's more regulations and laws.
Well, I don't know if there's regulations and laws, but sometimes it's just more money.
More money. Yeah. So that's what I was reading. That
so they don't have any money.
That's what I was reading. Like a lot of jails are their upkeep is very poor. So like was Rikers? Can you walk us through what Rikers Island is like? Is it like
dingy? I wouldn't say it was. Well, I mean,
for a prison,
yeah, for jail. It really smelled bad, and the reason why it smelled bad because the island is literally on like garbage, like a landmass of garbage. So
wow.
Yeah,
like a landfill almost.
Like a landfill, exactly. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. So sometimes when I was coming over the bridge
I'm sure
on the
that
bus,
must be toxic.
it's very toxic. I developed a crazy cough when I was there for that year, and so sometimes all the garbage, like the garbage will kind of emit like kind of like the land will fart. So you literally smell. I would be on the bus. I'd be like, yo, who the fuck just farted? And then I realized, oh, it's the landmass, the landfill, excuse me, that it smelled like rotten eggs.
Oh,
so you get like this smell of rotten eggs. So that's what the jail was sitting on. Yeah. But in terms of like the physical, it was, they mobbed and it was just dingy. It wasn't a bright place, but it wasn't decrepit.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience working with the kids there, did you have any moments where, especially because working in a prison was so new, was newer to you at the time. Was there any experience where you met a boy or a young man and found out what his charges were, what he was going up against, and was like appalled? Was that something like a daily thing for you? Like, you're here for what? Or did you ever get riled up and feel like? I feel like if I was there, I'd be like, how can I help? I gotta you try to become your own activist within there, but like then you kind of, I'm sure you at some point you feel defeated because there's such a big system in place that you're not going to win. Mm-hmm. But like, was there any moment or any time or different like situations
that sticks out?
Yeah, with like different kids throughout your time there that
like, what's the most ridiculous thing you've heard someone being there for? Obviously, like there's something like fucking allegedly stealing a fucking backpack. You sit in solitary confinement for 2 years or 3 years. I'm sure you've heard crazy shit too.
Yeah, a kid who jumped a turnstile, and so if you jumped a turnstile, and if you jump the turnstile,
what does that mean? Like you don't pay for the
subway, right? You don't pay for the
yeah,
subway, and so
I gotta take it for that.
If or like loitering or riding your bike on the sidewalk.
These are things they were in jail for.
So let's say you have to pay a fine for that, right? You don't pay a fine. Now you don't pay the fine. So now you have to, you have to show up in court and either, say I'm going to pay the fine or not pay the fine. Now, if you don't go to court, if you don't show up to court for, let's say, riding your bike on the sidewalk, now you have a warrant out for missing that court date. So now I jumped the turnstile.
And you have a warrant.
Now I have a warrant out. So now I go to jail because I didn't go to court for riding my bike on the sidewalk and I jumped the turnstile. Now there's a warrant out. So now I got to sit in jail.
And possibly you're 16 and maybe your mom's not always present or doesn't know this happened. And so no one's even staying in your ass to remind you to go to court, which can very well happen to any teenager.
And you're scared.
Or you're scared. You want to tell your fucking mom you don't have the money.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm not going to court for no fine,
right.
But 16 years old,
you're a child.
Right. You're not taking the court seriously or that court date seriously because you were like, why are they even fucking with me for riding on the sidewalk in the project where I live?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I've been riding on this sidewalk all my life.
Right. I'm riding in the courtyard of the housing project. Well, get out of here. And they throw the ticket out. Like that, you know what I mean?
They're not seeing this bigger picture that possibly
now I gotta go to school. I don't have my fare or whatever. I'm gonna go see my shorty. I don't have $2.75. I jumped the turnstile. Whoop, come here, kid. And they run ID up. You got a warrant out. You just show the court. Up. Now you're going to bookings. And now you're sitting in my class.
New York police are like my least favorite police. Like every time I go, I'm like, ugh. They're always like overweight and sloppy and walking. I'm like, who the fuck hired you? You couldn't chase after me if you tried.
They just have an attitude. I mean, New Yorkers.
New Yorkers are a whole
So
different.
like, give a police officer power.
Literally.
I mean, yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, I think about my child and thinking about like thinking about her. I mean, because I know there is a female population at Rikers. It's very small.
I work with the girls at Rose M. Singer, which is the female which is the female facility at Rikers Island, Rose M. Singer, and I work with the adolescent girls. When I'm not as a full-time school teacher, but I worked with them when I was a reentry specialist. So I was working with an organization that worked with kids once they came home from jail to help them not recidivate, not go back to jail. And so part of that meant going to the jail to talk to them, do workshops, create a relationship with them, right, and to let them know about the services available to them once they come home. So when they come home, they get linked up with the program that helps them, kind of get back into school, back into the community, so help prevent them to come back to jail. So when I was a reentry specialist, I went to Rose M. Singer. I worked with the teenage girls, and they were firecrackers. Them girls are firecrackers.
So are they isolated from like all male? Like I know, like they're not. No. I know they're not mixed together. But
Rose M. Singer is a totally different building. So meaning the women, the adult women, and the adolescent girls are in the same building, which is so Rikers Island has a bunch of different buildings, right? So when you go into the island, I think there are like 11 different facilities, separate buildings. Bus to this building, bus to that building, bus to that building. Out of all, I think it's 11 buildings. There's one building that is just for women, and they keep in that building. They keep the girls separate from the adults.
Right.
Yeah.
But some of the correction officers are still male.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there a difference in interacting with the young women?
Yes. Oh my God, I love the girls. They're chatty catties.
Yeah.
Very emotional. They cry a lot, because I don't know what it is about women. I guess it's socialization, but we're able and more, nimble with talking about our emotions and talking about what has happened to us, as opposed in terms of our pain.
Well, men are taught to be tough.
Right.
Don't cry.
Exactly.
Don't talk.
Not that didn't happen. I had had a lot of male tears, young boy tears, in my years of working at Rikers. But the girls, I had to keep tissues because it was, I was constantly big sister and I'm just crying on my shoulder, all the time.
And how does that affect you? Did you have to make a conscious effort to not get emotional with them, or were there ever moments where you kind of broke down with them, or like
it's
you have to kind of create a boundary. You have to have some sort of boundaries, I would assume.
Yeah, it was a real fine balance because I'm an empath too. So
what's your sign?
I'm a Libra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I would absorb, I absorb their emotion and their feelings and what they're dealing with and their trauma. So I had to learn how to manage the trauma that I was, trying to heal and absorb. Yeah. And so, I wouldn't get emotional. I was very, I didn't want to lean and I didn't want to encourage their woundology. So it was a real tricky balance.
Woundology. I've never heard of that word.
So woundology is a term that I learned from one of my mentors, Renee Wilson, who was a clinical psychologist who was out there, Black woman. She was fierce at Rose M. Singer. But woundology basically means that if we all have wounds, we've all been wounded in our lives at some point, right? Whether it's family, whether it's, some trauma, something. We all have a wound that we carry. And these girls at Rikers, they are wounded. And so sometimes woundology means you just talk about your wound and you identify with your wound and your wound becomes your identity. So it's always about your wound. And so it's necessary to talk about your wound because you have to give it air for it to heal. But when it becomes your
center,
right, when it becomes your total identity and who you are and your center. So my job was to listen for them to air the wound, but not to let them languish in the woundology and say, okay, well, look at what you've survived. Look at who you are. Look at how far you've come. Look how strong you are. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Who do you see yourself as? And to get them to see their strength and their purpose and their vision beyond the wound. So it's a balancing act, because it's not about ignoring or disregarding the wound, but it's not, at the same time, I didn't want them to languish in it and identify themselves as
wounded
it.
people.
I mean, shit, that whole concept is not exclusive to people incarcerated. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Or for just teenagers.
Absolutely.
right. I mean,
Absolutely.
just thinking and talking about that reminds me of someone very close to me in my life who is definitely identifies themselves by their wound. And
I like that word so much better than, what is it, like victimize? Oh no, is that the same word, like when you're
the
victim all the time?
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
I like wound, because I think playing victim kind of takes away from whatever the wound is,
Mhm.
and saying victim kind of leaves you in like.
And victim gives, I think, more power to the person who victimized you, who did it to you.
Yeah.
Where the wound is like,
You're
I've
taking
been hurt.
responsibility for your wounds.
Right, exactly.
And now I'm sort of separate from that person, and now I'm going to heal whatever the wound is.
Yeah.
Was there ever, like, I'm sure, like I asked you before we started recording, like, how do you separate work from your personal, like, was there ever a time, or many times, I'm sure, I mean, I would imagine that you come home after like a heavy day at work and you have to just unload, like, was there anything in particular, like, was there any one experience in particular that kind of has always stayed with you, or that like kind of surprised you? Or like a relationship that maybe you developed with one of your students that, you know, maybe.
Well, self-care for me was really challenging because I'm an empath, and because I'm a healer. So it's my nature to absorb and to listen and to want to heal and nurture. So I'm a nurturer by nature.
You might have some cancer undertones in there.
I have a Gemini moon, Cancer rising.
Oh, God, that's why we get along well.
Yes, yeah. So I'm Libra with a Cancer moon. Gemini moon, Cancer rising.
And I think I'm a Libra rising.
Oh, I think we talked about this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So because I'm a nurturer, it's very difficult for me it's very easy for me to give, to nurture. So even though I don't have children of my own that came from my womb, I was constantly full and just like feeding, nurturing other people's children, standing in the gap for their mothers when their mothers couldn't be there. So that self-care was difficult for me. So, I like weed and red wine, and I self-medicated, which.
Do you want to smoke?
Huh?
Do you want to smoke?
No, I don't smoke anymore.
Wank.
But yeah, exercise, going to the gym, talk to my girlfriends, just journaling. Yep. That was kind of my way. I just kind of figured it out on my own, and I wasn't necessarily successful at it because I was depressed a lot.
During that time.
Oh yeah.
Is there
it was heavy. I carried it with me, and I thought about them. I took the work home with me.
How can you not?
Mm-hmm.
How can you not? That's I can't imagine not thinking about those, like going home, and you're like, damn, I got to leave you here. I got to leave this here. You're going home, and who knows what you're facing when you go back to your cell. You know.
Yeah.
Speaking of you, like, did you never want kids, or do you think this experience taking on all these young children, like young kids, did that influence how you wanting to have kids at all?
No. The mother in me, there are different forms of motherhood. You can be a mother physically and give birth, from your womb, and be a mother. And you can also be a spiritual mother. And so I've been a spiritual mother to hundreds of children, of young people. And for me, that I took that shit really seriously. Like, going to court when I wasn't in that capacity, but when I was a reentry specialist, I was doing shit like going to court, every court date for some of my kids. And I called them my kids, like showing up, sitting in the courtroom all day, talking to the judge, advocating on their behalf, setting up meetings with the fucking DA to talk to the DA, to humanize the kid that I'm
Yeah,
advocating
it's not
for.
just another
statistic.
Exactly.
It's not just another head, another number.
Yeah, you know, I mean, who sits in the courtroom and shows up to court all day? Like
But
that's my
somebody's mother.
Exactly. So I've been a mom to a lot of these kids.
I salute you for that, and I appreciate that. You know, like so many kids get lost in the system, and so many kids' parents aren't educated enough to assist or not. You know, there's just so.
Well, they're working, and you know
Yeah,
they can't
there's
take
shit.
off to sit in the
There's
courtroom
other
because they
kids.
got to feed the kids
The
or
rest
they-
of the other kids,
Yeah, you know what I mean?
or
Like,
pay this lawyer, or,
Right.
you know?
And it's funny that you said that, because we had another friend who's an author also, Nicole Russell, who was on a previous episode, and she's Erica's friend. She's around the same age as us, and I'm sure it's like, so, you know, as women in general, there's this bullshit like, why aren't you having kids yet? Why aren't you having kids yet? Like that's our only fucking duty in life is to like lay down and give birth. And she was saying the same thing. You know, she also is a part of a nonprofit that focuses on the youth, and she's like, I consciously made the decision that I'm going to give my mothering to the kids who need it, who don't have it, or, you know, and so that's a huge thing, you know, that it's obviously needed in society. So that's, I commend you for, you know, your active duty contributing to those souls and those people who need you.
Look, my life is still being curated, so who knows what God has in plan for me?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, you know,
Would you have kids of your own?
would I? Yeah, I would if it was the right situation. Yeah,
Okay.
Right. You know, partner. That's important for me. You know.
You think?
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
You know, man. Life is so interesting, and life is so complex and layered. And I've always been a woman who's lived outside of the box, outside of the norm, outside of social, you know, traditions my entire life. I mean, you know, taking my play in 35 different prisons and working in prison for 20 years and being you know, a model and living in Paris and traveling the world and going to Africa and Asia and India. I mean, my life has been, you know, full, and I'm still curating it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what this next chapter how my life is going to be curated. But I know that it's going to be atypical, and it's not going to follow the norms of, you know, what society says women should do. And listen, I don't, you know, I'm curating my life, and God, let me take that back. God is curating my life. I'm just
living it.
I'm just the museum. God is saying, okay, now it's time for this painting, and now we're going to have this sculpture. And so who knows what will be presented in my life, but I'm open to all kinds of possibilities. You know, I may meet a man who already has children, or you know, who fucking knows?
I know.
You know what I mean?
Isn't that the most beautiful part about life, though?
It is.
Like everything is so intentional and so random, but intentional and perfect. Like just like us having this conversation, I was like, when I was like 15, I saw your show and I was moved by it then, but obviously didn't take it seriously then, even though I had intention to. And I said like 8 years ago, I'm going to do this class, and then now, right now, you know, you're here in LA, and I got to see your show again last year, and it's just so intentional. And even though that planted a seed 15 years ago,
Look at that.
and it took this long to cultivate, or, you know, like, or just meeting Erica and finding those friends, and I live in LA, so it's not like some distant foreign thing, but it's just so perfect how things are aligned for you. And even you being here, and you've been always who you are, and it's very out of the box, this is who the fuck I am, and I don't have to go any certain path. And even us starting this podcast, that is very much birthed in that we don't have to be a certain type of mother, and we can still be good moms.
That's
you know,
right.
It's so lovely to just, like, you know, have a tribe here.
Yeah.
Find your tribe, and they gravitate towards
That's
you,
it.
and it blossoms beautifully.
That's so true.
Do you have any more questions on your?
No, mine were no.
I wanted to tell what happened to him, but I really have to pee. Can we pause for 2 seconds?
Yes.
6. Sorry, my water's very clean.
Wow, it's so interesting. I mean, God, like I don't know how like I would be able to separate my life from and be personal. I think because I'm an empath in a lot of ways. It's like, how do you go home and not. Do you have you kept in touch with any of your students?
A couple of them I have. Like one of my boys. Well, a couple from that stage, because that was a specific stage. Two I kept in contact with, and they're doing good. One not so much. So three actually, two, three, one. There's another one who I worked before that, and he's doing great. He's in college.
I realized we didn't do the poetry intro. Should we have her do her poetry?
We can do it. Do you want it to? We can do it within the episode, or we can do it outside of it and make it our intro.
I was gonna say, should we finish this out and then come back in? Okay.
I think I want to just ask. I was just asking her in general, like, has she kept in contact with any of like her former students
or any success stories?
Because I want people to know that there is
light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. Go ahead. No.
I was going to ask you, do you think that you have have any, because when we were having this conversation today, I asked her, I said, if you had a son, I asked her, if you had a son, what would you think the conversation you would have with your son about, like,
what happens when a police officer pulls you over or something?
And she
was
dealing
with law enforcement.
She was like, in reality, like, it doesn't matter if I have a son, I have a daughter who's Black, so we still have to have these conversations. And we were talking about, should we just record? Well, do you have any advice to parents? Like, what? Like, I know.
I don't.
I know. Because even as a woman, I don't know if I was.
Well, she asked me, like, well, how would I tell my daughter about a police officer? And I told her, well, first of all, I do want her to know that, like, not all police officers are bad, but you have to be careful because you don't know. They're humans, and when you give people power, things can go wrong.
Especially when you're a Black.
Especially when your life is regarded as less than.
Like, how do you explain that to a child? I mean, I guess when you are born Black, there's going to be other instances where you recognize that you're Black, and so this is.
I think it's one of those things where you can't sugarcoat it. They just got to know.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where, like, you don't sugarcoat it.
And then I was saying, like, as for us to be, like, outspoken and opinionated and authentic women, isn't it odd to have a conversation with your child to say, like, in the case you get pulled over and it's a nasty ass cop,
be quiet, don't talk back, tone it down,
attitude, and maybe you could know all your rights, but should you tell him that? Is that going to piss him off?
Probably.
But isn't that a odd, like, such an ironic conversation to, be yourself, be who you are, speak up.
But in this case,
because hopefully you don't come out dead.
Well, that's okay.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. It's a very small bladder.
Well, I was asking Liza before our break, or during our break, if she has had if she kept in contact with any of her students, and what are some of the successes that have come out of your journey and experience at Rikers Island? Because, I mean, we could talk about the darkness and the negativity all day, but I think we need to shed some light on, like, some of the positive things that, have happened. So can you share anything like that with us?
Yeah, I had one of my students, he got out, he went upstate, he got out, and he got his associate's degree, and now he's in college in Georgia. I think he's going to Georgia State University. So there are a lot of success stories. And, even though it's a dark place, there was a lot of light in that dark place. I mean, my students were hilarious. They were funny. They were vibrant. They weren't, sad and dejected and demoralized.
There's like youthfulness in them.
So there's a resiliency with youth. And they brought that to the classroom. They were, and there were moments when you saw that they were depressed and they were heavy, and, I would let them sit and sleep in the classroom in the back. But for the most part, they were just normal adolescent, I called them my rugrats, because they were just like little gremlins, just, high off of sugar.
Right. And Jamila, she had asked me today when we were, getting ready for you to come, how, speaking about, like, police brutality and engaging with police officers in this very, like, high tension time, how she said, if you had a boy, how would you, talk to him about law enforcement. Like, what do you do if you get pulled over? And I told her, well, it's not exclusive to boys. I have a daughter who's Black, and I would have to have the same conversation with her. Yes, men are, I think, more targeted than women are.
I mean, obviously, look at the
statistics. Yeah, clearly. But I still have to have that conversation with her because she needs to know too. What if she's in a car with a Black boy? You know, whose parent didn't have this conversation with them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or alone.
Look
Absolutely.
at Sandra Bland.
She needs,
that's right.
And she was just a Black woman driving through Texas, just got a job.
That's right.
And, you know, I was like, I don't know how I would have that conversation with her. I mean, I think having conversations like this kind of like make me obviously think about it more, but I think, you know, I want her to know that not all police officers are bad people, but, you know, they're human. And when you give a human power to kind of do as they will, shit can go wrong. And on top of it, Black bodies, brown bodies are not as valued as white bodies in this world, subconsciously and consciously, you know. And
I think that's where the conversation starts, is really, how do you, and this is the challenge of being an educator, how do you take something that's so complex and you dissect it down to its roots so it's digestible. So how do you unpack white supremacy to a kid so that they understand what that is, because that's what they're being faced with. Even, I don't care if you're a Black officer, a white officer, or a Latino officer, they're still working in the system of white supremacy, and they're upholding that system. And what is that system, and how does it affect their consciousness, and how do they see you in that system through that lens of white supremacy, which is less than, which is, you know, demonized, which is, you know, threat, enemy, which is historical. So how do you unpack that for a child so that they understand what white supremacy is? Because, you know, Neely Fuller, who is, you know, a great, you know, philosopher, he said that if you don't understand white supremacy, every other thing around you will confuse you. So, yeah.
If you don't understand white supremacy,
white supremacy, everything else will confuse you.
Yeah, there's a
then
lot
you'll be
of lies.
confused
Unless
about
you're
everything
white.
else.
Unless, of course, you're white.
I mean, obviously, I don't really have to have this conversation with her right now.
Of course.
You know, but you start dropping I think you kind of, like, even she asked me the other day, and she was like, she asked me something about race. And
she said race?
Like something about like Black and white, like mommy. And I was just like, oh my God, how do I explain this? It's like, without like, I don't want to like, I don't want her to be tainted and think like
she's different, or
not even different. It's just like there's so much bad in it, like bad shit in the world. Like I want her to be optimistic and hopeful.
Look at me.
In a way, to keep that hopefulness in her, like knowing I can't lie to her and say, yeah, baby, like racism is going to end one day, you know. But I want her to know that there's people working towards creating a better world for people like us, you know?
You can contribute
to that in some way, and you should, but then, you know, it's like, well, why should I contribute if it's never going to end? You know, it's like I think about
I don't like to say things like that. I never say never. I never say it's never going to end. I never say you, like, one person probably can't change this big system. I don't believe in that. I feel like if everybody has that attitude, nothing will change. You know what I mean? Like, so like if we all said, fuck it, it's too big of a mountain to plow, that mountain's just gonna grow. But if we all have the attitude, like, let's get in the dig deeper and figure this shit out, let's talk about it, then eventually, hopefully, you know, those things end. And then I also asked you, what did you remember having a talk? Like, do you remember being told,
no,
like, shit's unfair? Be nervous when you get pulled over, because we were both thinking.
I wasn't raised by a Black person. You know, my mother is Latina, and you know, she's encountered her bouts of racism, but nowhere near.
And your mom, she's Latina, but if I just saw her walking, I could think maybe she could be Latina. She could be like.
People think she's Middle Eastern.
Yeah, white. Yeah.
No,
not white, but Middle Eastern.
White. Yeah. But so those were talks I never really had. It wasn't until I started encountering my own shit that and me being a light-skinned Black woman. I mean, of course, my experience is different than yours. You know, and I'm well aware of that, but I have encountered things, and not being educated on it.
So it was never brought up.
No, not really.
Because I think I posted something a while back. I think it was the doll thing. Like, how do you feel about letting your?
I forgot the name of that test.
Yeah, and I talked about that test, but I said I tell all my friends, and about like, don't get my kid images that don't look like her. And I see that like my friends that aren't Black don't really take it as seriously because I don't think they understand to the level, like how big it is. But like, fuck, what was I about to say?
Well, because our kids are daily are blasted with what European beauty standards are. Like that's we're good on that.
Yeah, like enough of those images.
But it's not enough. Like they're always going to be there. So therefore, if I can at least get my daughter to like have some dolls that look like her, or like have some movies that look like her, we can balance it out in some way. Because inevitably, she's going to be influenced in some way by that. I mean, now it's so funny because beauty standards are shifting, and now it's cool to have big lips, and now it's cool to have, you know, a big ass, or, you know, like braided hair, ethnic hair. But I mean, but who knows how long that trend's gonna last?
Right. And even though it's cool to have those things, it's still not that. I mean, it's cool to like the Black culture, but is it cool to be like? There's and a lot of times, funny as fuck as it is, like obviously, like we're being more celebrated right now as Black women, but have you really noticed that like our attributes are being celebrated more on non-Black women than
on ourselves?
Yeah, so that's a whole different fucking seat. But yeah, I forgot.
But I want to go back
to I think so. Just to kind of to jump in, where to start? I would probably start before having that conversation, and this is taking a page out of my parents' book. How I was raised. I was raised to love my culture, Black culture. So that was infused in me, like early in the household. You know, knowing about Frederick Douglass and knowing about, you know, just, you know, Malcolm X, and knowing about my African history, and, you know, my father who was very, very dark skinned, and my mother who was very, very light skinned. So colorism was not in my household because both my parents were gorgeous, and they were both at extreme ends of, you know, the color spectrum. So it was, you know, Black beauty and Black pride, and, you know, loving being Black was something that was
from the beginning,
from the foundation. So by the time that, you know, we talked about, or race was being talked about, it wasn't like, ooh, a negative. It was like, oh, we're so fierce, and this is why they hating on us. This is why they hating on you. So this is why you have to be careful, and this is how you have to deal with them, and this is how you have to, you know, this is before, what was it called? Code switching. My dad taught me about code switching.
Oh, damn, I never even heard of that.
Yeah, code switching is like, you know, we speak a certain different way when white people enter the room. Well, hey, how you doing? Yes, okay. Thank you. We put on our court voice, right? And then Susan, girl, let me tell you what happened, right? And so that's the code switch, right? So my father did that all the time. You know, he'd be in the kitchen talking to us and talking about race, and, you know, niggas this and crackers this, and, you know, he would just be, you know, my dad was very, very much like your father, very unfiltered when it came to race, and the phone would ring and be a white person on the phone, and we would know instinctively that he was talking to a white person
on the other line.
Hey, Jim, how you doing? and it was just this thing. And so we learned, oh, that's how you navigate whiteness in the world as a Black person. Do you know what I mean? So those are just some of the things that, you know, were rooted in me. And
damn, that's crazy.
It was.
I mean, it's just crazy that we have to learn how to navigate in the world, and then know how to like shut it down and bring it back up when it's necessary. And and the fucked up part about it is, it's like, not to say it's not okay to be who you are at all times, but if I come and talk to you in my Black girl voice, you may not hear the message correctly. You're not going to hear what the fuck I'm saying because you're so stuck in how I'm delivering it.
Right.
And that's why it's important. And it's really not about diluting ourselves, but basically speaking a different language. So
being bilingual.
Yeah, I am bilingual.
Essentially, yeah.
Even though I never had a label for like code switching, I knew. And
I do it all the time.
Me too.
Right. We all, instinctively
do it all the time.
Right.
And I almost, to the point where, and this is like, if I'm in a certain, like, say I'm in a high-end store, and oh my God, I was with my girlfriend and this young ass guy she was dating. He went to the Louis store or something, and he said something to the clerk, like, how much this is right here? And I literally cringed in my skin. Like, I'm hitting the exit. Like, I can't be seen with you in this. Like, I just, you know, and it annoyed me.
He didn't code switch.
He didn't code switch.
He didn't code switch.
He didn't even know he
And there's a value in that too, but, you know, so it's a double-edged sword.
It is. And even like,
because he didn't care.
He didn't give a fuck,
Right.
which is fine too.
Exactly.
It's actually kind of beautiful.
It's very
It is.
beautiful. And you know what I noticed when I went to school down south, because I am so good at code switching, and I think I don't want to say this anymore, but prided myself in the ability to do that because you're going to know I'm not just you're going to know you can't fuck with me because you know I'm educated and I know how to talk to you, where you're going to understand me. However, I found that when I went to school down south and I was like talking to certain people, I got fucked up and mixed up, like, because their accents were so deep and their slang was so hard that I associated that with being uneducated, when in fact that was not the case. But they didn't feel the need to code switch in certain environments, which in some ways is admirable,
Right.
because we shouldn't have to talk a certain way to not die or to get respect or to not be labeled as uneducated. And I had to like reprogram myself to think like, how ignorant am I to think that who the fuck do I think I am?
Right,
I'm not the smartest bitch ever, but it's unfortunate that that's a part of being Black. That is most definitely a part of our experience. Like, we have to learn how to navigate in both worlds. And then there's been times I went back home to Philly and my cousin's like, why are you talking so white? Why you talk like that? Is everybody skinny like that? Like, I'm like, this ignorant bitch. But it's just, it's just how I was taught to code switch, even though I didn't realize I was code switching. And I was even talking to Erica, and before I came back from the bathroom, as being as outspoken as we are, and how much we advocate for being authentic and being who the fuck we are, and
raising little girls to
do the same, you still kind of have to, in some ways, unfortunately, reconfigure in certain situations. And I even said, like, what if we did know our rights? What if, like, the kids were like, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Like a police officer.
Yeah, sorry, officer. That's against amendment, and code 26. And they were like, oh, this bitch thinks she knows some shit. They could go either way.
Yeah.
But you even have to tell your kids, like, maybe you need to let them know you know all their shit that they don't know, because that could be read incorrectly too.
Telling your kid to basically dumb themselves down, make themselves smaller, to make sure
that you get out of the situation.
Outside of that car pulling you over doesn't feel intimidated by you or less than inferior to you, because that insecurity in itself is dangerous. That insecurity gets people killed. That insecurity gets you roughed up.
Got Sandra killed. Got a lot of people killed.
So it's just funny. It's funny that we want to raise our kids to be strong Black queens and kings, but then when faced with, that type of authority, you ask them to kind of tone it down. And I probably would ask her to do that, because I know, me, I'm sassy as fuck. Police officer pulled me over. I'm like, yes, sir. Hello. I'll be reaching over now to open my glove compartment. Yeah. You see that I'm reaching over. Okay. Like, it just shifts. You would think I'm the most meekest woman that you've ever met, because I'm not. When I was telling Jamila, when I see a police officer, and she asked me, I asked her actually, when was the defining moment when, like, seeing an officer was no longer like safety, that you became like scared? And like, I was thinking, like, when I see a police officer driving down the street, I don't think, oh, I feel safe. I think, oh shit, what am I doing wrong? Wait, gotta make sure I'm driving okay. Okay, my window's okay. And I was like, what moment in my life did I understand that not all police officers offer safety? And I was telling her, I actually did remember, it's when my father was pulled over, and my dad had a really nice sports car. My dad had a very nice car, and I remember we're on our way to church, actually. And I was probably about 5, and he was getting pulled over, and he was pissed. And I didn't understand. He was like, what the fuck? This is bullshit. And he was cursing a lot. And then I remember him saying, it's because I'm Black. It's because I'm Black. I'm driving this car. And I didn't really understand. And the police officer came fucking with him. I knew who my dad was, and I knew he hadn't done anything wrong. Maybe he had, like, his windows were tinted, like, too much. I think that's what it was. And then we pulled away, and to see how angry he was and scared, essentially, like, let me know, like, oh, should I be scared of the police? And I think that was that defining moment for me, because I wasn't raised by my father. I was raised by my Latina mother. Like, those were not conversations I had. I was like, oh, police are cool. That's fine. And even my daughter goes to school, and they have, like, these days where the fire department comes or the police officers come. her teacher sent me a picture of her with a group of police officers, and I was like, ooh, like something in me made me like go, ooh, like I wasn't like, oh, it's a police day, like, and I'm like, what? That's so fucked up that I live in this world, and I'm like, I don't associate it with safety at all anymore.
Right. I mean,
and I'm not to say all police officers are bad, and that's something I want her to know too, because I know they aren't.
Right.
And I'm sure even you, like working in the facility you did with like correctional officers and different types of, people in positions to kind of correct things, you meet good people.
Absolutely.
And like people that are there to because they are care.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets so diluted by all the bad shit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and then I know you've had a different experience, whereas your parents always taught you like fuck the pigs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's always been fuck the pigs.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm definitely Malcolm X, not Martin.
Well, your middle name is Asada.
My middle name is Asada.
So there it is.
So, I mean, I don't know if I've always felt fear, but definitely not aid. Definitely not, like, oh, I'm safe. The police are here. Mm-hmm. But also, honestly, subconsciously, there have been times I've probably maybe been walking alone and a group of black guys walk by and I'm thinking, oh, shit. And I'm like, damn. Or like, I've never seen that black person in my building before. What is he doing over here? And I'm like, damn, bitch, even you're subconsciously fucked up. But same goes for, I've been in the airport and I see like a shaved head, really military looking white guy. I'm like, oh, he's probably fucking racist as fuck. And he's steady trying to help me in the airport. I got the baby and he's like, here, let me help you. He got mad at me. Like, I keep trying to help you. I'm like, oh, okay, well, just help me then.
Right.
And I have to continuously check myself. Like, you made an assumption about this person and you have no fucking clue who these people are, because it goes subconsciously, it goes so many ways,
So true.
But then also, like, just saying on the gender, raising young boys and raising young black girls, the fucked up part is, like you said, it doesn't matter. And even in that recent case where, oh my God, this shit breaks my heart. But in St. Louis, where the cop.
Oh, Tamir Rice.
Mm-hmm. No, not Tamir Rice, not the kid. When he was in the passenger seat, the cafeteria worker.
Philando Castile.
Philando Castile got shot on Facebook Live in front of his 4-year-old child and his girlfriend. And it's like, damn, the cop didn't even look in the back seat and think, oh, there's a child in the car. And what if the bullet went through the seat, or like, damn, this could be that person's parent. Like, even our children don't matter to some people, and some of those people are in positions of authority, and that's fucked up. And like you said, everyone's human, but it's just a lot. Sorry.
Yes.
This is one thing that I'm very passionate about, and I try not to get too deep into it because I can come off very dark, and I'm really not that type of person. I'm very in love and in light, but these kind of topics, are so dark and so barbaric and so fucked up.
It's barbaric. It's the perfect word for it.
It's so barbaric, and it's taken place over such a long course of history. And
because white supremacy is terrorism.
It is. It's
white supremacy is terrorism. White supremacy is barbaric. And to be at the constant, receiving end of barbaric terrorism on our bodies and our communities.
In the place that you actually live.
To us.
Yes.
It does
and not to mention ancestral trauma, like our eggs are our whole lives, which means I had my Luna in my body before, which means my mother had her egg in her body. Like we've been here through all of this. And so there's so much hurt. I'm so hurt by it.
Well, I'm convinced that's why Black women have a higher rate of fibroids, is because we're carrying what was it called? Cellular trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And from all of the sexual assault from our ancestors from when they were rape farms on plantations.
I've literally had encounters where I'm like making out with like a white guy, and I get like, maybe I was really high that day, and I'm getting like a flashback. Like,
oh my God, I've had the same experience. Yes.
I thought I was fucking tripping.
Flashbacks of what?
Like a white slave owner or something. Like
me too. Yes, I had that experience. I thought it was me. I was like, okay,
I'm like,
really.
Oh my God, I'm so happy. I almost didn't say this. I tried to explain this to you one day. I'm like, this sounds crazy, but literally, it was like going back and forth. like it was that person, but then I would see like a slave owner, and it was that part, but like maybe I don't know, and it just started to trip me
Was
out.
he the slave owner?
Yes.
Wow.
And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? And I was like, okay, I gotta go. This is not working out for me. No, I don't want to keep going. I'm good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it was literally just like going back and forth.
Wow.
And I'm like, am I fucking tripping right now? But no, now I know I'm not.
Yeah, no, I had that experience once dating years ago, this white dude. And we walked by, we were just going out for brunch, and we walked by a window, you can see reflection. And when I saw my reflection, I had that flash. I was like, oh shit. And I was like, okay, you are tripping. But I was not the same in that relationship. And
After that,
I was like, my ancestors
I ain't fucking with you.
They are like, we are not having this daughter. We're not having this daughter.
And not to say that I've dated more than one white guy. I mean, yeah, I don't discriminate. But just in that particular situation, it was like, ooh, I can't really do this. And I'm not saying like that's to say like I'm not allowed from my ancestral trauma, but
because there's so much trauma that has not been unpacked and that this country has refused to address and deal with. So
people want to have the conversation all the time, get over it, you've come so far, you have equal rights now. But it's like we can't even discuss that until we fix all of this shit that brings us right here. There's so much self-hate. There's so much, just hate within the community. There's so much miseducation. There's so much no education. There's just no, like literally, and this is my biggest thing, literally in the States, our history taught about ourselves begins in slavery, period.
Exactly. That's problematic.
That's problematic. When you learn about, first of all, we get the month of February. Oh, happy Black History Month, everyone. The shortest month of the year. And it's like, slavery, slave ships, Abraham freed you, Malcolm, no, we didn't talk about Malcolm X. Martin Luther King, he had a dream, March 1st.
Well, here's the thing. To that point, I had a coworker who I worked with who was militant, and brother X. Shout out, brother X, if you're listening. He said to me, and I thought that was so brilliant because I believe and I know that education has been colonized. So when you have the sons and daughters of our former slave masters teaching our children, they're not teaching them to be free. They're not teaching them the true history of who we are. And
the kings.
Would you let your captivator educate your children?
Exactly.
Makes absolutely no sense.
Right. Exactly. So therein lies why there's so much miseducation and ignorance about who we are as a people, who they are, and who we've been together in this American experiment and interruption of our evolution.
It's an American fucking experiment, but joke's on you, bitches.
And it's also an infection. I believe white supremacy is an infection.
It is, because it's easier to just go along with it, especially if it benefits.
And it's infected, and it infects white people, and we've been infected. So they're suffering and we're suffering. So until white supremacy is unpacked and dealt with, I think that we will be constantly asking questions. But how did we get here? We are like deep in a rabbit hole somewhere.
But anyway, if you have any questions about where to begin your journey, knowing yourself and knowing this system, and you're in the DC area.
Oh, yes. Come see The Peculiar Patriots. I will be performing at Woolly Mammoth Theater almost the entire month of April in Washington, D.C.
So cool.
No, and seriously, literally, I've seen it. And if you are in the D.C. area, Siobhan, all my friends that I know, I'm going to tell, spread the word. You have to go see this show. It's epic.
Oh,
it's inspiring. It's moving. It's educational, and it's something I think everybody should see, definitely. And you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and talk to us and let us pick your brain and ask you all types of questions. And
it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm so happy, and I'm really excited to see your show.
I can't wait for you to see it on Tuesday.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you're coming.
Really,
and this is a new show you haven't seen.
I know, I haven't seen this one, so I'm excited too. Mm-hmm. Tell us your Instagram and your website again.
So my Instagram is Liza Jessie Peterson, Liza Jessie Jessie Peterson. And my website is LizaJessieP.com.
And the book is All Day, and you can find it on Amazon.
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and on my website.
All right.
And Liza is going to take us out of this episode with a poetry.
I'll do an excerpt of. I'll do an excerpt of a Black Love Manifesto.
Okay. So please, whenever you're ready. Wait, hold on. Let me make sure the children shut the fu. Hey guys, can you be quiet for like 30 seconds? She's about to do a poem.
They're like quiet.
I know. Oh my god. This episode, I think it's the children screaming in the background the whole time. But
That's hilarious.
welcome to Good Moms.
Yes, exactly. I love it.
And this is your first time joining. This happens.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Probably like 90,
Real world.
90% of the time.
Oh my God, he's got both of them on his back. That's hilarious.
I mean, except we have babysitters currently. Normally, it's them playing by
Oh my
themselves, and so
God.
they're interrupting constantly, which
it's real.
is real. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's real.
I know we do get reviews like, it's great, but I really couldn't take the kids in the background. I'm like, you don't have any kids yet.
Yeah.
And then some people love it, but let's wait for the plane to pass.
I'll just set it up around.
Do you have to edit this?
Slightly.
Oh, okay.
Like this type of stuff.
And usually when the kids come in, we have already preset recorded, like, please excuse us, Irie and Linda have interrupted us, and then we play like a little elevator music, and then we'll bring it back.
Oh,
Bring it
that's
back.
cute.
But we generally keep it very flow. You know, don't want to chop it up or anything like that. Someone's revving their engine. Okay, so whenever you.
Oh,
like to
okay.
go,
All
please
right.
go.
This is an excerpt from a longer piece, but this is short.
Okay.
Okay. Blue, black, brown, baby buckshot, shorty rock, melanated prince king kissed by the sun, with your solar blessed skin sculpted like a god, master crafted in my womb, first womb, ancient womb, safe and sacred womb, African fertile soil, black gold, diamond oil, mineral rich. Mama me, I, she, I, we stirred you up good, boy. You, potent, powerful, wonder, warrior of the world. You who always had the planet head nodding to your beat, got the globe axis leaning and tilted like your hat. Call it black swag, black cool, cat daddy funky blues, rock jazz juke joint, sugar shack sanctified, negroid crunk type of, stank funk type of, monster 808 on the microphone check 1 2 1 2 type of boom to the back. The boom bap. Soulful genius encoded in your DNA, divine nappy archives coiled in your hair. The creator's rhythm love child, a natural heir to planet rock, as poetry somersaults out your mouth. Your slang is slung around the world. What you say, how you say it. What you wear, how you wear it. How you do it, urban haiku it. It's showtime. Olympic ghetto gymnastics. Double back flipping to it. A one-handed handstand pop lock Harlem shaking to a ronde pirouette and shell toe Adidas on crowded moving subway cars to Brooklyn. World-class concrete symphonies. Underground ballet for $1 donation. Hey, you was born with it, baby.
Look at my arms.
Oh,
I have goosebumps. Wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
And that's an excerpt.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
This
Thank
has
you
been
very
such a pleasure. So much fun.
Thank
you guys
you.
are awesome.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, make sure to follow us at goodmoms_badchoices and
Visit us online at www.goodmomsbadchoices.com.
and subscribe to our mailing list.
Oh, subscribe to our mailing list. Subscribe to the podcast. We're also on YouTube.
And if you like this episode, feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Adios.
Bye, guys.
Right.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
That was so beautiful.
That was fun.
Wow.
Glad you got to do this.
I am too. Hey, now I have to pee.
I was like, how long am I going to be able to hold it? I'm going to be able to hold it.
Episode 47?
Yeah,
Can I take a What time is your dinner? Oh, where?
Bro, because she never told me. That's the thing. Whatever. I'm just having this headache too.
Oh my god, Carlson.
Huh?
It's all good. Is it cool if I pull up in 30 minutes to an hour?
I owe her. She doesn't listen.
Don't encourage them to fight. Don't encourage them to fight.
I'm not making them fight. I'm trying to stop them. Sure.
That was good.
Yeah.
We haven't had anyone like that.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed it. She's amazing.
You're gonna relate to the show Tuesday too. So we're gonna just do music at the top.
Yeah, I think we do that. Okay, so should we do an ad before you leave?
What are you gonna do it for? Dispensary?
I'm trying to think of my friends.
I know. What the fuck? We have to have more friends with more businesses.
And if we're gonna keep doing this, we have to actually push for people to stop.
Also, stop doing fake ones.
Like, hey, God, Irie's gonna be fucking exhausted. I can't wait. Exhausted.
Oh, let's take a fucking picture.
Oh, yeah.
This is him. Go ahead in the lobby. Should we finish writing?
It is him?
It is.
Okay, yeah, we gotta finish watching this. Because I'm already gonna forget. If we don't, I'm gonna forget half the shit he already said.
Wait, where is it?
Can I close it?
Oh no, I opened Safari. What are you on Chrome?
Oh shit, we're still.
Stop what you're doing.
Sorry, guys.